okay, I'm going to depend on a transcript to transcribe this so that I can then copy and paste it and develop it into what I hope to be a poem. Okay, so where are some of these developments heading? I'm enunciating every word, hoping that you, the transcript, pick it up. Okay, so where are some reflections today? Okay, using silence as a communication to express displeasure is something that I must slowly grow out of and learn how to use my words and only use silence when necessary. I fear so much about others doing to me because I typically have done the same thing within myself to them. Every silence I battle with because I know what silence means when I use it, which means that when I am confronted with people who have different life experiences, subjectivity, and they are just silent or they don't respond, I immediately think that they are angry at me because I know how I have used silence. It becomes projection. My accusations upon others are usually admissions of my own internal emotional compass. The second dilemma is poets are hilarious. If you ever want to know what a poet or person may struggle with, look at what they are trying to help others with. Patching up scars in others where they were wounded. That one sounds pretty obvious. Now, lastly, I am a communications major. I myself have always said that my intent with communication was to learn how to be a relayer, a translator, somebody who was capable of determining what certain languages meant for certain people and bridging the gap between dissonance, regardless of whether it be linguistic, cognitive, experiential. I wanted to bridge that gap that so many people have to go over just so that they can actually understand people or be understood. Because what a song might be to me may be a different song to somebody else. And what may be a monumental, life-changing experience to me might be a minimal, not so significant experience for them. A Kendrick Lamar concert for me, being my first concert, could have been another person's worst day ever. Me watching Tangled and loving it could be the equivalent of somebody watching Lion King. And the emotion can be elicited the same way from different avenues. However, as I find myself deeper into communications and the major itself, I discover that it is really mostly about power and participation and how one participates to the power that they are under and subject to, which has then resulted in me taking a reflexive approach and seeing what it is about me that has become so drawn to communications. And I've determined that I myself am always using subtle shapes of power in different ways. We examined how there are people that use absence as power. When we discuss things to a broader audience, we do so with the intention of making our voices heard so that our voices can be used to hopefully change things. But the issue is the people who we need to reach are never reached. We reach like-minded people, but like-minded people are not the people who need to be touched, who need to be sought, who need to actually take action. We are never actually in rooms with people we disagree with. Whether it be algorithms or For You pages or anything, they place us in our own territory. They keep us within our comfortability. And the issue is that a lot of people use absence as power because they do not have to acknowledge their situations. They do not have to acknowledge anybody else's situation because it's inconvenient to them to change things. It's inconvenient for things to be different because they're okay in their situation because it hasn't harmed them, but it's harming everybody else. but they don't get in the room with everybody else to even see that it is harming everybody else. For example, this is why I personally deem personal stories, reflections, introspections to be so important, and why I try and encourage everybody to share their experiences, because as much as we believe our experiences to be myopic or individual or only as far as our own eyes can see, that is exactly what makes them pristine and valuable, because each person delves into the trove and waters of life based on what their eyes can see, and that composite creates a collective consciousness of being, and that is where we find our place to land. For example, today I was in class and I was very frustrated because we were talking about how some people can sound condescending and how to not do so that we can facilitate safer spaces. But then some kid kept asking questions about what it means when this, what it means when, and I got so frustrated. I try and implement a natural regimen towards my mental, which is be curious before you're furious. But in this case, I was annoyed. So I had to look within myself and ask myself why I was frustrated and infuriated and irritated with everything he said. And it was because his ignorance was condescending. His ignorance was condescending in a way that reminded me of the fact that there are so many of us who do not have the opportunity to walk around with ignorance. How many of us it's not normal that most of us have been told and taught, learn the law so that when you're encountering a situation with people that are of power, that you have some baseline of knowledge. You cannot walk around this place not knowing. Know your exits, know your escape routes, know where you need to be at all times. Who's calling? Who's calling my phone? Who's calling my phone? Hang up. Okay. Hang up. Is it? Good. Thank goodness. Oh, that didn't. Okay. Yes. Some people, like when you walk on a sidewalk, walk like this so that you aren't in the wrong. When you put your clothes on in the morning, consider this. Consider the gaze. Consider who's looking at you. Consider who's observing you. Consider who's seeing you. Consider whose eyes are being placed upon you. When you walk into places, look at faces and make sure that you're identifying it's almost like paranoia. It's borderline paranoia. And what I recognize as my own paranoia is also a collective consciousness paranoia. I'm now understanding. Because the more we reach out to people and hear their own stories and read them, we understand the privilege of freedom, or the privilege of walking without having to concern oneself with certain things. We understand that there are some people who just do not have to even consider certain things. So when this guy was asking all of these questions, I found myself irritated and agitated because his ignorance triggered my own inability to be ignorant, because I've never been able to walk this world whatless. I've never been able to walk this world being incompetent, being unknowing, like the smallest thing, having to know just to feel safe in this world. Now, I'm not saying this is a universal experience, but this is a me experience. And within that, I have found a lot of trouble. So I find myself getting frustrated when certain people ask questions about certain things in relation to, why is it this way? Why is it that way? Why? And they're not asking from a nefarious place. At least I'm pretty sure they're not. They're asking from a genuine place of wanting to learn, being curious, wanting to help maybe. But it's frustrating because, and I have to remember, there are places where I am also going to be like that. But I guess in this space, it was a hip-hop pedagogy class, and it was in relation to hip-hop and blackness and femininity and where those diverge, where those entangle and where you need to disentangle them. And he kept asking these questions, and I hated it because it just, I don't know. Maybe there's a jealousy I have in knowing that some people get to walk freer than others, and the fact that it's now normal, it's very normalized that Black people have to have these discussions with their young children and their brothers and sisters, and this cycle continues where you have to sit them down and say, this is the world you live in, this is how people are going to perceive you. And in a world that constantly says that this is not true, oh, we've changed so much, we're still having these conversations. and they're still normal. And the fact that these conversations are there also gives credence to the fact that it is very much, there is a threat. There is a threat. But also there's an antithesis to that. Sometimes we internalize our own paranoia and hatred that was put upon us by a world that was built to keep certain people out, that we then further the cycle of paranoia by teaching people something that is no longer true, and we give them tools that no longer serve them. We give them a hammer to cook. We give them a hammer to cook, and I'm sure you could put together scrambled eggs, but you're gonna break it. We give kids knives to cream their skin. These are messed up analogies, but it's the best ones that I can give. As someone creams their skin with a knife, they're going to cut. It's going to hurt. And this is what we do perpetually as a world. So I don't know where this started. I think it started with where you see poets trying to help other people, or people is where they struggle with the most. I struggle communicating, and I've never admitted this. I've always been perceived as a good communicator, as a good relayer, as someone who's good at translating messages and seeing nuances, but I'm not as good as I once thought. And I've always prided myself on being that person who is good at that, who is able to, who's capable. But the more I enter these rooms and the more I speak, I recognize that there's a dissonance. There's a distance between my words, how they're said, and how they reach and how they land and where they're positioned. I know what I mean, but they don't know what I mean. So I can maybe help them understand what they mean to other people, but I'm not capable right now of relaying a message of mine and allowing another to know what I mean. So something's off there, and something's getting lost in translation or in communication, but I'm all right at helping someone understand what they're trying to say and where it comes from and translating that language, but I can't communicate that same way. And I recognize this in relationships, especially my most recent one, because I used to be a huge advocate of compatibility, and that if you guys cannot communicate and understand each other, you cannot be together, which is true, but there are so many nuances that make that not as simple as that statement. Because here's the thing. I used to blame my girlfriend a lot for not understanding me, when in reality, I wasn't taking into consideration what certain things I was saying meant in her world, in her subjective lens, in her subjective language. I was taking an approach of, I don't want to say deontology because that just screws things up. Impartiality, there's the word, of objectivity. This should mean this should mean this. And for somebody like me who gives the ability to others to have such nuance and ambiguity and ability within their words to reach different places, I'm not good at that. I think I don't understand how this works. We live in contradictions. Despite the fact that I can give someone a capacious look at their world and their words and their space, when I am speaking and I'm reaching out to somebody or I am discussing something with somebody, that is the universal framework. That is what is true. And anything outside of that, for some reason, I just can't register it. Not that I'm unable to, I just have a hard time with it. A more specific example, my humor is very different. So I'm not funny. I'm not like funny, haha. I'm counterpunch funny. So if you say something and then I might say something funny and then I'll obsess over that because I heard you find it funny. So then I'll say, okay, I'll register it in my mind. They found that funny. So I'll try and rehearse that conversation the next time I speak to them to bring that moment back. But you can't bring moments back. You have to live in the present and keep on going with what you have. And not every day is a funny day. Not every day is a funny second, right? So there's that. But with this in particular, it's really weird. My girlfriend did not like my humor. She wasn't fond of it. She didn't like it. And she was understanding enough to approach it from that nuanced perspective. She said, Delson, I'm not saying you're not funny. I'm just saying this is not funny to me. So acquiring that knowledge and acquiring what was funny to her. And I remember I made the mistake of then sending things that I thought would be funny to her, but they weren't really funny to her. It was only until I recognized that what I found funny wasn't really what I found funny It was a reflection of what I found funny from others speaking through me. So then I would then send that to her thinking that that's what people found funny, but she didn't find it funny. When I started sending her things that I laughed at without the reaction of the world, without comments, without what other people said was funny, she kind of found it funny. She started to laugh a little more. When I started to step out of that realm of being the masks that I wear based on how I studied reality and what other people perceive as funny, then she started actually enjoying the jokes. She started laughing at them. This was post-breakup, but the point is, it remained. And there's something in here. I don't think I'm going to need a poem because I think I've described this one pretty eloquently, which is weird because I usually get tripped up over these words. And the funniest part is I intentionally slowed each word down in this so that each word is emphasized and magnified instead of what I usually do, which is take things and put them all in a bunch and then ramble over my words. So this is 16 minutes. That's actually pretty good. Kind of proud of myself. Yeah. I think there is one more point that I wanted to bring up to try and bring it all together, but it does not always have to come together. I think each one of these you can see where the line starts to map itself and make something clear. I think my main point is, please tell your stories. Please tell your stories. Please be honest with yourself. Please be honest with others. And please try and recognize where you end or where you start and where so much of what you look at and find funny or looks like this would make somebody laugh ends. What do you find funny? What do you laugh at before you hear other people laugh at? What do you think before you look into the comment section to find your reflection and your opinion? What do you think? Who are you and who is it that is funny to you and why is it funny to you? And why does that matter to others, or why should it matter what is found funny or discovered as such? Why? Why? Constantly asking why. And this is also why I find myself, I don't think I developed that point enough of why that kid asking questions frustrated me. But if I do ever get the chance to have people see this and comment on it, see what I did there, I would love to give more of a foundation there, because there's a lot here and I think I could do a better job at focusing on something more specifically. But yeah, tell your stories. Please be honest about your stories. What you consider to be an individual experience is really also something that a lot of people don't experience. And that difference and dissonance, which is a fancy word for difference, is something that is very noticeable in small examples, like my professor. Small thing, when he was a kid, his friends used to love to go to the mall. But he hated going to the mall because whenever he went to the mall, all he heard from people were, oh, do you need help with this? Are you okay here? Are you fine? Which was really their way of perceived helpfulness when they were really just looking to see if he was stealing anything based on stereotypes that they had inherited and had been given and profiling that they've been saying given absolves the person because they still have some accountability. So both exist. Yeah, and then small things about why you do what you do, why you don't do what you do, why you feel what you feel, and why you may not feel a certain thing. Like, I feel empathy deeply for a lot of people. But one thing that I have a really hard time feeling is sympathy, which is really funny because I can feel for a person and it's deep. Like, I can't even begin to describe the depth of those waters. But when it comes to feeling bad for somebody, my upbringing comes up. Those who don't hear will feel. Those who, there are some other adages, some classic Caribbean adages here. I was raised on no second chances. Like, no one gets a second chance. They've shown you their colors once. Screw that. Screw them. And Sympathy is hard, and there is a difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is hard for me. I have a hard time feeling bad for people because that rigid part of me of one if I can go but no. It doesn't ever show, but I've gotten better at being someone who can be there for people, and not just from the lens of what I've understood. See, there's a big difference. What we learn is great. Knowledge is power, and knowledge is only power if we know how to use that knowledge. And once again, a lot of the ways I've helped people are based on ways that I've seen as effective in helping others. But when we take a more individualistic approach and understand that sometimes the best way to help another is looking at how we would also like to be helped. Golden rule, do not do to others what you would not like done to yourself. And also do unto others what you would like done for yourself. That's not always the case. Sometimes you look outside of yourself and see what's helped another, and maybe that can help this person. But more often than not, I find myself getting caught up in language, right? Pathology. Oh, if I say this word this way, and if I say this word this way before that word this way, then maybe this will help. Maybe this is what will allow this person to. And no, usually it's sometimes the simplest of things. Like today, we were asked about what respectability politics were. I gave Adel's an answer. I think I said a really complicated, I was like, it's society's way of balancing the burden of their faults and blames on the back of the individual. And I thought that was a good answer because it's true. And another classmate raised his hand and he said, well, he said it like this. He brought up the model minority too, but he also brought up he said it in a more discernible way. I'm not saying he said the same thing I said because there are layers to both of our formulations, but he said it so simply and he said it in a way that I thought I was saying it, but I wasn't saying it the way I thought I said it, if that makes sense. So there's that dissonance again. He said it in a way that makes it easy to comprehend. He said it in a way that makes you understand that this is not just society bending the backs of the everyday individual. It is society and the way, it's society's misshapen identities of people asking people to fit into places that they do not belong. You are asking a fish to fly, and when the fish cannot fly, you judge it based on that ability, and now every fish after that is now judged on their ability to fly, even though they can't. So now gills have to turn into wings. See, I'm also putting it in a way that's not as universal. It's not grounded in understanding. But he did it in such a wonderful way. And the class, it was great. I'm not discrediting my point, nor am I discrediting his. They both worked out. But the point here is he had a translator that was better for the audience. He was better at reading the room. Okay, I know a poet. She's great. She's an intuitive poet. She doesn't ever prepare what she's going to say beforehand. And she's two different people before she gets on stage and once she gets on stage. Two different people. That's a different person altogether. And I always used to say that I admire her ability. But again, when you tell a tree that you admire its ability to be a tree, it'll probably be confused because that's just what it does. It's not like anything crazy. When you're constantly you don't really always know what you is like to others because that, again, is perceived differently. And she loves my poetry and she hates it when she talks to me about poetry and says great things. And I was like, okay, cool. It's not that great. And I do the same, and she does the same thing to me. She'll say, you have some great, I'll say, oh, this is your intuitive poetry. Greatest thing ever, because you're not even preparing. You're just reading the energy of the room and you're poeticizing on the spot live, and it's spectacular. And it seems like you always know where to reach people. But from her perspective, she could do more. From her perspective, she could do better. From her perspective, that's not great. Like, it's just there and it's been there. And I recognize that Well, there we go. We've done the same thing to each other. Reading the room. She's able to read the room. She understands the audience that she's in, and she understands how to maneuver in communication in ways that are more accommodating for the rooms that you are in. I'm not saying we change the self depending on what we are in. Or maybe I am saying that being a chameleon has its benefits. Because even though it changes colors the whole time, it's still a chameleon. It still retains its sense of self. But with words and expressions and things that we say, understanding that we don't always have to account for who's looking at us and who we think we hear. Because before I speak, I'm always looking at a room. I'm always looking at what a person might say or believe. And my words are already influenced and shaped by the opinions of others before they even come out. I haven't even had the chance to speak, and I'm already thinking about how it'll be perceived, how it'll be made to feel, how it'll be criticized, how I package myself. I become what I speak about despising, repackage, repurpose, thingified. And then your words come out and you stutter and stammer and stumble because you don't really want to say that. Your body's rejecting it and you keep going and keep trying. And yes, it might sound great, but it doesn't sound like you, and you knows this. You feel it, you hear it, you say it, it hurts, it's rough, and you feel it when you're talking. I think sometimes the baby things that we hear are so applicable. My mom always used to say to me when I was a kid, use your words, because I'd either be silent or I'd use physical ways of expression. Use your words. And to this day, that is the greatest lesson that I need to heed. I need to learn how to use my words. I need to learn how to stop using absence as a soft power and stop using absence as a form of expression when I am frustrated. And then I need to stop learning how to taking that internalized insecurity projection of knowing that I use certain things against people and then thinking that they're using it against me, while also being knowledgeable that they could possibly be doing the same thing. And if they are, recognizing that and seeing if I can do anything to help, which would be by being honest, but not honest through the lens of what I think is honest based on what other people are saying. Honest because it is what I think. But in order to be honest and know what you think, you must first ask yourself just how deeply the waters of you being given up to others and others speaking through your lens and your voice and your tongue have gone. So this is probably a dilemma of mine that I'm learning how to navigate. And I refer back to, I wish I could find it right now. I've been looking for it all day. And it's my former sport and film professor. His name is Stephen Sheps. He did an Unsettling the Self, Unsettling the Field, an auto-ethnographic analysis of field research and travel. And he had this excerpt at the beginning that was just brilliant, or I found terrific, because when we are in academic settings, we are so often disposed of the self. We are so often told to just drop ourselves, to just drop out of ourselves, because that's not what experience is. Use academic language. Take the I out of this. Empirical research, objective evidence, impartial, primary. But then when you're looking at things from a historical perspective, or when you're looking at things, you try and get closer to the source. The closer to the source you get, the more likely you're going to get a primary source. And what is a primary source? That is a person's experience. The most valuable and received sources in all academia are primary sources. And primary sources are almost always from the horse's mouth. From the person themselves. So then we are encouraging people to look for the I's voice while taking out the voice of I, self. And that's troubling. So in this Stephen Sheps auto-ethnographic exploration, I was deeply in love with what he wrote. I'm deeply enamored by it. And he said in the unsettling and attempt at decolonizing language, or just trying to express something beyond the shape that had been taught, and also looking outside of his lens as a settler, as a like certain intersections that all make him all of these things. He's not one or the other, he's all of them. And seeing where his bias starts and where it ends, and how that contributes to how he sees things, and the lens that he looks through, and the lens that he writes through, and the lens that he searches through, because they all affect each other. So he said this thing, and I keep saying he said this thing, and I keep on going off because I'm scrolling live time right now trying to find it. And I thought it was really, really valuable. I can't find it, so I'll try and paraphrase it. But to my knowledge, it was that what I had said prior to, that he had been taught for so long that settling a language, or that settling an academic source or story based on one's own experiences, were discouraged. But he brings to the forefront, elevates to the surface the individual experience. He says that our experiences are valuable and treasured, and that is why I am using them. Our experiences are what define how we decolonize language. It defines how we ground society in itself. Because if we can't relate to anything else or cliches, we can relate to people, and people are the sum of so much, and many of those are their experiences. So the biggest thing for him was him discussing the tensions that were established in his research, but also through his lens, his bias, his lack of bias, what he felt, confronting why he didn't feel what he felt, why that's important. In communication, that's called reflexivity. Reflexivity, which I thought just meant ability to stretch oneself out. And I was like, okay, we're just stretching each other out in communication. It's kind of freaky. But no, it's really stretching one's own thoughts of self out. And there's a limit to that too, because if you're constantly the one thinking of self and examining self, you're also looking at it through a lens of self, which is where I get to, I hope, is my last point. I have constantly hated sharing anything about me with other people. I've been raised, what your right hand knows, don't let your left hand know. Keep it to the there are certain things you don't say. And by certain things, you don't say anything, nothing. You die with it, you take it to the grave. Not by my glorious. Wait, what was I saying there? Yeah, so you don't share anything. You don't share anything about yourself. And this is where I found myself at a clash. Because as I was thinking about self, I always hit a block. Like there was always a block, and I was very aware of that, but I was also very aware that I'm using the same tool. I'm basically looking at a mirror and expect it to give me something different. I raise my left hand, I said, okay, the mirror is gonna raise the right hand. I raise my right hand, I said, okay, a mirror is gonna show me a foot. No, it's going to keep on showing you what you give it. And you can keep trying to evade it, or dodge it, or try to counteract reality, or you can open yourselves up to other people in hopes that it opens yourself up to you as well. Because by opening ourselves up to others, we also open ourselves up to us. And we do the same for others as a byproduct of just natural order. So when we deny ourselves the chance to open up to others, we deny ourselves the chance at seeing ourselves too. And, I think that's pretty special. I think that's really cool. That we, it's a lot simpler. We can only reach people as deeply as we reach ourselves. And I like terms, and I like quotes, and I like fancy cliches. But when terms and words and things are said without lived experience, a part of you knows it. Like I give a lot of advice to people, but I don't live it. I know it. And I've known things for a while, but I haven't lived it, which makes it very different. And a lot of the people who I give advice to, they're mentally understanding it, but they don't feel it in their body. They don't feel it in the experiential part. See, they know it, but they don't feel it. Same way I know it, but I don't necessarily feel it yet. There's a difference. And I used to do a lot of things to force that bridge to come together. Like if I was giving relationship advice and I knew something but somebody was going through something really bad, I try and find somebody hoping that she'd cheat on me so that I could give someone advice, because I can only give advice if I had the experience to match it. You don't have to do that. It's okay to just know things and let life work out naturally, because in a weird way, and I'm using a quote which has rung true in my life, the messenger always becomes the message, and life will always give you a chance to embody your advice, or to embody what you think is advice, or embody what you believe to be true. Life will test your morals, and life will test your foundation, and it will constantly put you in situations of, well, seeing how true you are to that. And, well, depending on how you act will, like those games where those choices you make impact the game, some more important than others, some less. So you get this decision will impact this decision will impact this later, and sometimes you don't get that. Same thing. Thinking of life through the lens of other things can be really helpful, but as long as you're reading the room and the audience too. There's a lot that we don't know, and this is why context is important. And you know what helps giving context? Stories, people stories, the knowing things. That's why that is so important. So I don't know what to do with this. It's 36 minutes, but I know that it's been fun, and I don't think I'm going to make a poem, because I think right now in this time, I've been writing a lot, and I think right now I'm trying to improve my speaking and my communicating, because writing's great and we can do both, and I intend on doing both, but I think they both bleed into each other. So, all right, let's see if this makes sense. I have to listen to this back, which is something I never really did, but I'm going to listen and see where I could have touched on some things and where I may have left some things out. Yeah, kind of happy about this. This feels good.